I don't really know how to unpack that one, so I'm just not going to touch it.
This is Jews Talk Racial Justice with April and Tracie,
a weekly show hosted by April Baskin and Tracie Decker.
In a complex world, change takes courage.
Wholehearted relationships can keep us accountable. I'll grab my Chromebook so that I can be on the looking at that stuff while we're talking.
I'm going to go grab and microwave a piece of pizza.
Yeah, good idea. The emojis with the different skin colors, actually, from our little text exchange this morning. And there was an article in The Atlantic from May 2016, actually, about the fact that a lot fewer white folks are using white-skinned emoji than, like this Andrew McGill actually did the data analysis to see how many white, like of the lightest two shades are being used, and compared it to demographics and internet usage and blah, blah, blah. And very few people relative to who's out there are using the lightest skin tone or the second lightest. They're using like the yellow, like the Simpsons yellow, or the darker colors. I'm just thinking about like,
is that by
what that means, and
in comparison to what?
To the to folks who use the three darkest skin tone colors that that the emoji gives you. So you have from like very pale like me, and then like a step up. There are 5 total plus the yellow.
Right.
So from the brown, dark brown down to sort of fair, kind of whatever weird peachy beigey color fair white skin people are. And according to this data in 2016, about 19.6% use that lightest white, 29.3 using the second step up, 27.4 the third step up, 21.3 the fourth, and only 2.4% using the darkest brown. That surprises me too.
Oh, wait, of all people?
This is on Twitter users using the emojis on Twitter. The different, hand and skin and color ones. And
this wasn't of white people. This was all across. I thought this was
all Twitter users.
Oh, okay.
The data set was all Twitter users, apparently.
Okay.
So anyway, I was just scanning that article because you and I had that conversation this morning, and where I had forgotten how to select the skin color, and the default for me was yellow, the Simpsons yellow for most of them, but for some of the ones I would use most often, like the wave and the thumbs up, were both brown skin hands, and also one that I never used, the middle finger up, was also brown skin, which I don't really know how to unpack that one, so I'm just not going to touch it. But yeah, and I finally remembered that you press and hold and it gives you the options. And I actually choose to use the color that's closest to my skin, which is the lightest, in part because I feel like I think I must have seen this headline before about the fact that McGill is that his name? Did I just say the wrong name? Anyway, this author thinks that maybe it's shame that's making white folks not sort of represent their actual skin tone, or maybe it's the fact that at its default, actually, even that yellow sort of means to represent white people, and so maybe it is the anti-racist move to not use the white. I don't know, and maybe it doesn't matter. It's just a
like, and in my mind, yellow with the Simpsons, I think like there's a way in which I think there are different interpretations and ways of unpacking that. Like, and I wasn't thinking we were going to be diving into something while I'm eating, but I kind of like model being human. So, and I'm hungry right now. So, yeah, like there's a way in which like I use the yellow at times because to me, like I would argue it'd be interesting. Like I'm sure that there's material out there, so maybe some folks can lift it up for us, but you know, about the Simpsons creators about choosing yellow in part because while at times people refer to Asian heritage folks as yellow,
right.
or excuse me, at least East Asian folks, but they're not literally yellow. Like they might have a yellow hue to their skin. Like I have a yellow hue to my skin, and they're more in the tan brown range, broadly speaking. Doesn't include everyone. And so I would suspect, especially like that on some level, or I'd like to think, let me just keep it simple. I'm not talking about the intents of the creator, but for me, I liked them being yellow because because in some ways, I don't know, I'm not really feeling this. Actually, because if like I think about most of the episodes and things like that and the behavior of the folks, I think there are characters who more or less connected to different racial patterns. Like I think Marge in some ways, given how down she was about some things and thoughtful about others, that it's not fully clear to me what her racial background is based upon her sociological manifestations. And I feel like that's
interesting
as well, right? Versus like Bart, both in his language and articulation. And I'm sure, I have no doubt that there are Black kids who very much match Bart's behavior, but to me, like he has more white boy behavior.
I saw an Instagram post recently, I think it was Instagram, where like a Black family had dressed up the Simpsons, like the whole family, right? With the mom was wearing the blue wig and like, and because I guess they had a boy, a girl, and a baby, and they dressed up, and there was some like comment from some, you know, white fragile white person who was like, how can you say that blackface is bad when you all are doing this? And the comments like tore her apart. They were like, lady, the Simpsons are yellow. They're not white. And so that's kind of what you're saying, I think, is that there was because they are colored yellow, whereas there are other characters who have brown skin. I mean, Apu, very problematic. That's a separate conversation, but his skin color is brown.
By that, you mean like super racist characterization and caricature?
Yeah, total caricature.
There are white folks like Mr. Burns and Ned Flanders,
and even Mr. Burns's lackey, whose name
Wait, Mr. Burns what?
His assistant, his lackey, the guy who works for him.
Smithers.
Yes, Smithers. Yes, thank you. Yes, Smithers is definitely white.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So
it's
because some people see it as a default, and I don't. I'm like that noise. I mean, I don't mind if like people like woke white folks like you, or like this often can be defaulted as white. So I want to choose to consciously use it. But as a person of color, like from my vantage point, I'm aware that because of the collective consciousness, the default is often white within the collective consciousness of the United States, because that's how people have been trained across all racial lines to have white be the default often, right, unless they explicitly grew up in an anti-oppressive liberatory context in which they were taught otherwise, or not so liberatory and nationalist context in which they were taught otherwise. Liberatory, not liberatory, anyway, it's complicated material for another day. Yeah, but like going back to it, so, you know, I choose the slightly darker tan one, like the pre-solidly brown or light brown. I'm like, this feels about right. Or and at times I go with like slightly darker because of my politics and how dark I can get in the summertime, and like my rationalization, like if I were healthier and if I were more active and outdoors, just from being outside, not trying to change my skin tone, just from being outside, my hair would be a little redder, and I was blown away when I was in college at one point, in my senior year, when I looked at college photos from high school, and having lived in New England for 4 years, I was like, yo, I was like 4 or 5 shades darker in high school. And I hadn't noticed how much lighter I'd gotten. And I was just like, whoa, I know you know, it was just like, wow, I was so tan. Like I was really brown. I wasn't tan, I was like light brown. I was a thumb up on the scale. So I have a cousin, that's my sweet cousin Christina, who like she has Black and Russian heritage, and her skin is light tan, a little sallow tan tone, but in the summertime, like her skin tone will change like pretty quickly because of her mixed race heritage, which I think is kind of cool. It kind of seems like a superhero trait. Cosplay, so hopefully she'll appreciate that.
Well, it's an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
It's a reminder too of the small ways that white supremacy shows up in our lives, like in the small details, you know. I think that's another piece of it. I did this training. I told you about this in a WhatsApp briefly that I wanted to tell you about. So for my board at my day job, we had a board meeting, and given all that's going on, my boss wanted us to talk about ways that our organization can help combat systemic racism. And so of course it was my job to lead that part of the meeting. And we started by watching a video that was created sort of about Charlottesville, and where some Jewish folks who live in Charlottesville after the Unite the Right rally happened, and really came to see the ways in which the oppressions are linked. So we started with that, and we talked about the things that our organization has already done. And then I walked them through this exercise to help recognize just one moment of white supremacy. And I only had like 10 minutes, and I didn't want to trigger any white fragility. I wanted to just like get a conversation started. And I was thinking about our conversations about white supremacy culture. And I personally am very susceptible to either or thinking. It is a trap that I fall into a lot. And I agonize, like I torture myself with either or thinking. Should I do this thing or that thing? Not recognizing there are, 300 other things I could be doing. And so I started there, and I invited them, I sort of talked about what either or thinking is, and I invited them to think and share any either or thinking that they'd faced, even just in the past week. And I'm not talking race, I'm talking like ketchup or mustard, vanilla or chocolate, like those sorts of things. And so we developed a little list, and I said, okay, so you see how it shows up. And these are relatively benign, vanilla or chocolate. Like maybe the other, 29 flavors are sad, but like it's relatively benign that you're stuck in that binary. But then think about the binaries like white, black, good, bad, productive, lazy, male, female, and think about how those are not so benign, especially because the stuff in the left-hand column, the good, the male, the productive, the straight, end up, there's a certain parallelism that happens. And so we equate those things. And to show them what I mean, I shared with them a couple years ago, this a picture of a product came up in my social media feed. And it was like the post with it was, I can't believe this is still happening in the 21st century, something like that. And I'm looking at it, and it's a Dove lotion, like a summer lotion from Dove. And it says, for skin type, normal to dark. And I'm looking at this thing, this is a couple years ago. So I've already started on my self-conscious anti-racist path, but it's relatively early, and I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at it, I'm looking at it. I didn't see it. Right. And so I shared this image first with the board. And, I'm saying, like, it said, I can't believe this is still happening. And then the next image has it sort of under, like, highlighted, normal and dark are not opposites of one another. Right. And it went so well, April. I wanted to call you, but it was, it was late. It was really late in Senegal, because I was so pleased with the way they were able to kind of follow me without triggering white fragility, and I used myself so that I wasn't sort of you people, and just really kind of acknowledge that this is just one of many ways that white supremacy culture shows up. And we were able to really have an interesting, kind of moment together. And then I sent them off with homework to pay attention to when either or thinking shows up in their lives, like over the next week. And I sent them the article that you and I talked about, about the different characteristics of white supremacy culture. Anyway, it was one of those like small moments for me on the path where it just felt really good. Like I was able to kind of have this conversation and lay out on the table what it is that we're working with without the drama of fragility and without drama. It was just sort of like walking through the steps of how this shows up in our lives. It was great.
I love that you chose that as that you shared that because one, so koha kavod, so much respect. That's phenomenal. It takes a lot of skill to be able to, like, of all the things that one could choose from, to choose the right thing that's at the right level and within that time frame that you had. Awesome. And it's really funny because I was just thinking about a similar type of thing where I'm wanting to, that I want to go deeper into some of the resources I've already created, that it's occurring to me. It's not about me creating more. It's about going deeper, right? So I have these 10 guiding principles, and it occurred to me, like, I'd love to create an e-course or a program out of this where we practice and then you provided this beautiful example that provided in greater depth of what that might look like around these different core principles, because I really believe with the 10 that I wrote, not that they're exhaustive or all encompassing, but they are pretty phenomenal. And if people began practicing incrementally, doing these things more, all of a sudden they'd find like, oh my gosh, this is so much easier if I just call a friend and talk this through with them. Or I don't know what to do right now, but I'm just going to really lean on emunah. I'm really going to lean into steadfast faith and say, I'm not sure what we're doing right now, but I'm going to stay the course. Or I'm confused. This principle talks about getting curious instead of quitting. So I'm going to start asking smart questions. Like, how did this happen? What am I missing here? This pizza is so good.
And this isn't something you made. Like, this is the Senegalese people have embraced pizza.
The place is called Sao Brazil. So I think it was founded by Brazilians who are making pizza in Dakar.
That's amazing. I love it. I love it.
Thanks for tuning in. Our show's theme music was composed by Elliot Hammer. You can find this track and other beats on Instagram at Elliot Hammer. If this episode resonated with you, please share it and subscribe. To join the conversation, visit JewsTalkRacialJustice.com, where you can send us a question or suggestion, access our show notes, and learn more about our team. Take care until next time, and stay humble and keep going.